Come on. This is the place for this. There we go. Close enough. Alright. Yeah. Yeah, close enough. I'm gonna fix the, thumbnail later. But for now. Alright. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Force over here, and welcome back to another reading live stream. So, as you can tell from the title, I am reading Stephen King's Night Shift, and as you can tell, I'm also using my bookmarks that I got yesterday. So here's what I'm actually going to do with them from here on in. For every story, I'll be picking out which bookmark to use for that story for one reason or another. In the case of Stephen King's Night Shift, well, I am going to be using, for the bookmark, the Pennywise bookmark. If you know the history of Stephen King, you know why I'm using Pennywise for this one. I'm basically going to do to this Pennywise bookmark and Stephen King, like how the Sorting Hat likes to take the Weasley family and put them all in the Gryffindor. But anyway, so for this part, I'll be reading 3 short stories to actually balance out where I'm at. So I'll be reading The Boogeyman, Gray Matter, and Battleground. Those are the stories I'll be reading tonight. That way we're caught up to where we're actually equal with the even and odd numbers. That way we can actually read 2 short stories for each part, or maybe 3 if the short stories are short enough. But either way, let's go ahead and get started. The Boogeyman. I came to you because I want to tell my story. The man on Dr. Harper's couch was saying. The man was Lester Billings from Waterbury, Connecticut. According to the history taken from the nurse Vickers, he was 28, employed by an industrial firm in New York, divorced, and the father of 3 children, all deceased. I can't go to a priest because I'm not Catholic. I can't go to a lawyer because I haven't done anything to consult a lawyer about. All I did was kill my kids, one at a time. Killed them all. Dr. Harper turned on the tape recorder. Billings lay straight as a yardstick on the couch, not giving it an inch of himself. His feet protruded stiffly over the end. Picture of a man enduring unnecessary humiliation. His hands were folded corpse-like on his chest. His face was carefully set. He looked at the plain white composition ceiling as if seeing scenes and pictures played out there. Do you mean you actually killed them, or... No. Imperial flick of the hand. But I was responsible. Denny in 1967, Cheryl in 1971, and Andy this year. I wanted to tell you about it. Dr. Harper said nothing. His thought was he thought that Billings looked bagged and old, or haggard and old. His hair was thinning, his complexion sallow. His eyes held all the miserable secrets of whiskey. They were murdered, see? Only no one believes that. If they would, things would be all right. Why is that? Because Billings broke off and darted up on his elbows, staring across the room. What's that? He barked. His eyes had narrowed to black spots. What's what? That door. The closet, Dr. Harper said, where I hang my coat and leave my overshoes. Open it. I want to see. Dr. Harper got up wordlessly, crossed the room, and opened the closet. Inside, a tan raincoat hung on one of the 4 or 5 hangers. Beneath that was a pair of shiny galoshes. The New York Times had been carefully tucked into one of them. That was all. All right, Dr. Harper said. All right. Billings removed the props of his elbows and returned to his previous position. You were saying, Dr. Harper said as he went back to his chair. What if the murder of your 3 children could be proved? All your troubles would be over. Why is that? I'd go to jail, Billings said immediately. For life. And you can see into all the rooms in a jail. All the rooms. He smiled at nothing. How were your children murdered? Don't try to jerk it out of me. Billings twitched around and stared balefully at Harper. I'll tell you, don't worry. I'm not one of your freaks strutting around and pretending to be Napoleon or explaining that I got hooked on heroin because my mother didn't love me. I know you won't believe me. I don't care. It doesn't matter. Just to tell will be enough. All right. Dr. Harper got out his pipe. I married Rita in 1965. I was 21 and she was 18. She was pregnant. That was Denny. His lips, his lips twisted in a rubbery, frightening grin that was gone in the wind. I had to leave college and get a job, but I didn't mind. I loved both of them. We were very happy. Rita got pregnant just a little while after Denny was born, and Cheryl came along in December of 1966. Andy came in the summer of 1969, and Denny was already dead by then. Andy was an accident. That's what Rita said. She said sometimes that birth control stuff doesn't work. I think that it was more than an accident. Children tie a man down, you know. Women like that, especially when the man is brighter than they. Don't you find that's true? Harper grunted non-committally. It doesn't matter though. I loved him anyway. He said it almost vengefully, as if he had loved the child in spite of his wife. Despite his wife. Who killed the children? Harper asked. The boogeyman. Lester Billings answered immediately. The boogeyman killed them all. Just came out of the closet and killed them. He twisted around and grinned. You think I'm crazy, all right. It's written all over you. But I don't care. All I want to do is tell you and then get lost. I'm listening, Harper said. It started when Denny was almost 2 and Cheryl was just an infant. He started crying when Rita put him to bed. We had a 2-bedroom place, see. Cheryl slept in a crib in our room. At first I thought he was crying because he didn't have a bottle to take to bed anymore. Rita said don't make an issue of it, let it go. Let him have it and he'll drop it on his own. But that's the way kids start off bad. You get permissive with them, spoil them, then they break your heart. Got some girl knocked up, you know, or start shooting dope. Or they get to the, or they get to be sissies. Can you imagine waking up some morning and finding your son, is a sissy? After a while, though, when he didn't stop, I started putting him to bed myself. And if he didn't stop crying, I'd give him a whack. Then Rita said he was saying light over and over again. Well, I didn't know. Kids that little, how can you tell what they're saying? Only a mother can tell. Rita wanted to put it in a nightlight. One of those wall plug things with Mickey Mouse or Huckleberry Hound or something on it. I wouldn't let her. If a kid doesn't get over being afraid of the dark when he's little, he never gets over it. Anyway, He died the summer after Cheryl was born. I put him to bed that night and he started to cry right off. I heard what he said that time. He pointed right at the closet when he said it. Boogeyman, the kid says. Boogeyman, Daddy. I turned off the light and went into our room and asked Rita why she wanted to teach a kid a word like that. I was tempted to slap her around a little, but I didn't. She said she never taught him to say that. I called her a goddamn liar. That was a bad summer for me, you see. The only job I could get was loading Pepsi-Cola trucks in a warehouse, and I was tired all the time. Cheryl would wake up and cry every night, and Rita would pick her up and sniffle. I tell you, sometimes I felt like throwing them both out a window. Christ, kids drive you crazy sometimes. You could kill them. Well, the kid woke me at 3 in the morning, right on schedule. I went to the bathroom, only a quarter awake, you know, and Rita asked me if I'd checked on Denny. I told her to do it herself and went back to bed. I was almost asleep when she started to scream. I got up and went in. The kid was dead on his back, just as white as flour except for where the blood had sunk. Back of the legs, the head, the buttocks, his eyes were open. That was the worst, you know. Wide open and glassy, like the eyes you would see on a moose head some guy put over his mantle. Like pictures you see of those book kids over in Nam. But an American kid shouldn't look like that. Dead on his back. Wearing diapers and rubber pants because he's been wetting himself again the last couple of weeks. Awful. I loved that kid. Billings shook his head slowly, then offered the rubbery, frightened grin again. Rita was screaming her head off. She tried to pick Denny up and rock him, but I wouldn't let her. The cops didn't like you to touch any of the evidence. I know that. Did you know it was a boogeyman then? Harper asked quietly. Oh no, not then. But I did see one thing. It didn't mean anything to me then, but my mind stored it away. What was that? The closet door was open. Not much, just a crack. But I knew I left it shut, see. There's dry cleaning bugs in there. A kid messes around with one of those and bango, asphyxiation. You know that? Yes. What happened then? Billings shrugged. We planted him. He looked morbidly at his hands, which had thrown dirt on very tiny coffins. Was there an inquest? Sure. Billings' eyes flashed with sardonic brilliance. Some backcountry fuckhead with a stethoscope and a black bag full of junior mints and a sheepskin from some cow college. Crib death, he called it. You ever hear such a pile of yellow manure? The kid was 3 years old. Crib death is the most common during the first year, Harper said carefully. But that diagnosis has gone on death certificates for children up to age 5 for want of a better... Bullshit! Billingsley spat out violently. Harper relit his pipe. We moved Cheryl into Denny's old room a month after the funeral. Rita fought it tooth and nail, but I had the last word. It hurt me, of course it did. James, I loved having him sit in with us. But you can't get overprotective. You make a kid a cripple that way. When I was a kid, my mom used to take me to the beach and then scream herself hoarse. Don't go out so far! Don't go out there! It's got an undertow! You only ate an hour ago! Don't go over your head! Even to watch out for sharks before God. So what happens? I can't even go near the water now. It's the truth. I get the cramps if I go near a beach. Rita got me to take her and the kids to Seven Rock once when Denny was alive. I got sick as a dog. I know, see? You can't overprotect kids. And you can't cuddle yourself either. Life goes on. Cheryl went right into Denny's crib. We sent the old mattress to the dump. To the dump, though. I didn't want my girl to get any germs. So a year goes by, and one night when I was putting Cheryl into her crib, she starts to yowl, scream, and cry. Boogeyman, Daddy! Boogeyman! Boogeyman! That's who had jumped into me. It's just like Denny, and I started to remember about that closet door, opened just a crack when we found him. I wanted to take her into our room for the night. Did you? Did you? No. Feelings regarded his hands and his face twitched. How could I go to Rita and admit I was wrong? I had to be wrong. She was always such a jealous jellyfish. Look how easy she went to bed with me when we weren't married. Harper said, on the other hand, look how easily you went to bed with her. Billings froze in the act of self-rearranging his hands and slowly turned his head to look at Harper. Are you trying to be a wise guy? No, indeed, Harper said. Then let me tell it my way, Billings snapped. I came here to get this off my chest, to tell my story. I'm not going to talk about my sex life, if that's what you expect. If that's what you expect. Rita and I had a very normal sex life, with more of that dirty stuff. I know it gives some people a cringe to talk about that, but I'm not one of them. Okay, Harper said. Okay, Billings, okay. Billings echoed the unique arrogance. He seemed to have lost the thread of his thought, and his eyes wandered uneasily to the closet door, which was firmly shut. Would you like that open? Harper asked. No! Billings said quickly. He gave a nervous tidal laugh. What do I want to do to look, sorry. What do I want to do to have, at your, what do I want to look at your overshoes for? The boogeyman got here too, Billings said. He brushed at his forehead, as if sketching memories. A month later, but something happened before that. I heard a noise that in there one night, and then she screamed. I inspected the door real quick. The hall light was on, and she was sitting up in the cab, trying to. Something moved. Back in the shadows by the closet, something slithered. What was that? What was the closet door open? A little. Just a crack. Billings licked his lips. Cheryl was screaming about the boogeyman and something's tied us this way thumbs. Uh, yeah. Once she said, claws, you know. Little kids have a trouble with the I sound. Ran upstairs uh, and actually I'm gonna go ahead and read that paragraph because I may have missed my part there. It also means my glasses are we got a bit of a rain going down here for some reason. And by ear, I mean like my tears were going down my face and I don't even know why. There wasn't anything to be excited about. Anyway, a little. Just a crack. Dylan slicked his lips. Cheryl was screaming about the boogeyman and something else that sounded like claws. Only she said claws, you know. Little kids have trouble with that T sound. Rita ran upstairs and asked what the matter was. I said she got scared by the shadows of branches moving on the ceiling. Crossover? Harper said. Huh? Cross, cross, wait, cross it. Closed. Maybe she should try to uh, say closet. Maybe, Billingsley said. Maybe that was it. But didn't, I don't think so. I think it was clean. His eyes began working yeah, there you go. Freaking glasses on too, man. His eyes began to sickle close the door again. Claude, so long! His voice said something to a whisper. Did you see that closet? Yeah. Jane's hands laced tightly across his character, laced tightly enough to show a white room at each knuckle. Wait, was there anything in there? Did you see that? I didn't see anything! Wait, hold on. Was there anything in there? Did you see that? I didn't see anything! Dylan screamed suddenly, and the words poured out as if a black cork had been pulled out from the bottom of his soul. When she did, when she died, I found her. See, and she was black, all black. She swallowed her own tongue, and she was just as black as a. I know this word. Oh dear Lord. You know, I had a sort of problem saying this particular word. Do I get in trouble if I'm reading the word and not actually saying it out loud? I know I said it before, but I just looked at it and I'm like, what's my motive, what's, what's the rule of cancel culture if I say a certain racial slur that I'm actually reading and people know I would never actually say in my personal life? What's the rule of cancel culture if you're saying something but you're reading it in a book? And if you don't believe me that it is in the book, let me show you. It's fourth line, first word. Yeah, I always like to show proof that a certain word is in a book, in case people don't believe that it's in the book. So, yeah. This would actually be the second time I've ever actually read that word. The first time was through Chicken Soup for the Teenage Soul, but that was actually written by that was written by a black person. So I felt like, and I knew that beforehand, so I felt like, okay, that would probably give me a bit of a pass because I'm reading a story that was written by a black person, so I think that would protect me in some way. Here, because the story was written by a white man, and he's using the N word for context purposes, would that also protect me from getting in any sort of trouble? Because, like I said before, I don't like using racial slurs because I know that while using the N word with the A at the end is used primarily uh, by the black community with one another, as well as other people that are not in the black community, but they still use it. Um, there is also that hard ER word that, again, this book has. So here's the deal. Technically, in my book, and I know some people will say that's not how that shit works, but quite frankly, I see it like this. As long as I am reading it from a book and not actually saying it outside of reading the book, I should be okay. And if people want to cancel me for using the N-word and they want to try to pull that out of context bullshit, I will provide the full stream and let people know, guys, I read this in a book. Technically, I'm not, while I am in a way saying it, I'm also reading a book where where a character is saying it. So yeah, as far as I'm concerned, I don't think. To me, you're allowed to. To me, you're allowed to say anything as long as it involves reading the book. As long as it involves you reading the book. If you're saying it without a book in your hand, then you are a racist motherfucker for saying the N word. But I showed you guys the book, showing having that word in there, so that way you guys, nobody can actually try to say, "Oh, he's a racist motherfucker." Why? Because he said the N word. Oh, did you not notice the fact that that A, he had a book in his hand, and B, he even showed it to us to to know that it was actually in the book itself? No, I didn't. Well, D, it's probably because you want to try to cancel a man for absolutely no reason. Yeah, people like to cancel other people or other things, if not people, over the stupidest of shit. If not both people and the thing. But alright. So, I'm gonna read it. You have been warned. Oh no. So many people. Alright. Before I do this again, I want to just reiterate the fact, in case people didn't know about this. In this part of the book that I am at right now, and I will show you guys this right here, so you guys know I'm not lying. There is the hard ER word in this book. For the word, I don't think you need to. I think you can see it. I'm going because it is part of the story, and everybody knows I'm not technically saying it because I am reading the story and I showed you that whole paragraph. So that way, if you want to pause it and read it for yourself, that option is there for you. But yes, it is there, and because it's part of the story, I do have to read it. So don't go all cancel culture on me. You can joke at my expense that I said it, but don't go all cancel culture on me. Alright? Okay. It's gonna be so weird though. It's always weird every time I see that word. I always feel weird every time I see that word because I'm like, I might get in trouble, but at the same time, I have to say it because it's part of the story, or whatever. She swallowed her own tongue, and she was just as black as a nigger in a minstrel show, and she was staring at me. Her eyes, they looked like these eyes you see on a stuffed animals, all shiny and awful, like live marbles, and they were saying, "It got me, Daddy. You let it get me. You killed me. You helped it kill me." His words trailed off. One single tear, very large and silent, ran down the side of his cheek. It was a brain convulsion. See? Kids get those sometimes. A bad signal from the brain. They had an autopsy at Hartford Receiving and they told us she choked on her tongue from the convulsion. And I had to go home alone because they kept Rita under sedation. She was out of her mind. I had to go back to that house all alone. And I know a kid don't just get convulsions because their brain frigged up. You can scare a kid into convulsions. And I had to go back to the house where it was. He whispered. I slept on the couch with the lights on. Did anything happen? I had a dream, Dylan said. I was in a dark room and there was something. I couldn't quite see in the closet. It made a noise, a squishy noise. It reminded me of a comic book I read when I was a kid. Tales from the Crypt. You remember that? Christ! They had a guy named Graham Ingalls. He could draw every god awful thing in the world and some out of it. Anyway, In this story, this woman drowned her husband, see? Put cement blocks on his feet and dropped him into a quarry. Once only he came back. He was all rotted and black-green, and the fish had eaten away one of his eyes, and there was seaweed in his hair. He came back and killed her. And when I woke up in the middle of the night, I thought that would be leaning over me, with claws, long claws. I just want to stop for a second here and say that what he just literally said reminds me of one of those short films, this one of the short films from the anthology movie Creepshow. You know the one. And you know what's ironic here? That was probably the worst one out of the five stories that I remember. I remember watching that movie, and that one was, in my book, the worst one out of the five stories that they had in the movie. But the second worst being uh, the first story, the middleman being the one that had Stephen King in the starring role. Hell, the only role outside of a cameo by Vince McMahon because Stephen King's character was watching WWE wrestling from back in that time. I would say the second one would probably be that one where you have that thing in that box. I forget that thing in that box. And then number one being they're creeping up on you. I know the title of that because of Bravo's Scariest Movie Moments, and I have seen that moment 100 times, like maybe 1,000 times at this rate, if I had to guess. Anyway, Dr. Harper looked at the digital clock and sat into his desk. Lester Billings had been speaking for nearly half an hour. He said, "When your wife came back home, what was her attitude toward you?" "She still loved me," Billings said with pride. "She still wanted to do what I told her. That's the wife's place, right? This women's lib only makes sick people. The most important thing in life is for a person to know his place. His, his, uh, station in life. I can't snap on doing this anyway. That's it!" He Billings snapped his fingers. That's it exactly. And a wife should follow her husband. Oh, she was sort of colorless the first 4 or 5 months after. Dragged around the house, didn't sing, didn't watch the TV, didn't laugh. I knew she'd get over it. When they're that little, you don't get it so attached to them. After a while, you have to go to the bureau drawer and look at a picture to even remember exactly what they look like. She wanted another baby, he added darkly. I told her it was a bad idea. Oh, not forever, but for a while. I told her it was a time for us to get over things and begin to enjoy each other. We never had a chance to do that before. If you wanted to go to a movie, you had to hassle around for a babysitter. You couldn't go into town to see the Mets unless her folks would take the kids, because my mom wouldn't have anything to do with us. Denny was born too soon after we were married. See, she and Rita was just a tramp, a common little corner walker. Corner walker is what my mom always called them. Isn't that a sketch? She sat me down once and told me diseases you can get if you went to a prostitute. How your penis has just a little tiny sore on it one day and the next day it's rotting right off. She wouldn't even come to the wedding. Billings drummed his chest with his fingers. Rita's gynecologist sold her on this thing called an IUD, intrauterine device. Foolproof, the doctor said. He just stitches up the her place, and that's it. If there's anything in there, the aid can't fertilize. You don't even know it's there. He smiled at the ceiling with dark sweetness. No one knows if it's there or not. And next year she's pregnant again. some foolproof. No birth control method is perfect, Harper said. The pill is only 98%. The IUD may be injected by cramps, strong menstrual flow, and, in exceptional cases, by evacuation. Yeah, or you can take it out. That's possible. So what's next? She's knitting little things, sitting in the shower, and eating pickles like crazy. Sitting on my lap and saying things about how it must have been God's will. Piss! The baby came at the end of the year after Cheryl's... Wait. The baby came at the end of the year after Cheryl's death? That's right. A boy. She named it Andrew Lester Billings. I didn't want anything to do with it, at least at first. My motto was, she screwed up, so let her take care of it. I know how that sounds, but you have to remember that I'd been through a lot. But I warmed up to him, you know it? He was the only one of the litter that looked like me, for one thing. Then he looked like his mother, and Cheryl didn't look like anybody, except maybe my Grammy Ann. But Andy was the spitting image of me. I'd get to play around with him in his playpen when I got home from work. He'd grab my only finger and smile and gurgle it. 9 weeks old, and the kid was grinning up at his old dad. You believe that? Then one night, here I am, coming out of a drugstore with a mobile to hang over the kid's crib. Me! Kids don't appreciate parents until they're old enough to say thank you. That was always my motto. But there I was, buying him silly crap and all at once, I realized I love him the most of all. I had another job by then, a pretty good one, selling drill bits for Shoot Cluett and Sons. I did real well, and when Andy was one, we moved to Waterbury. The old place, the old place had too many bad memories and too many closets. The next year was the best one for us. I'd give every finger on my right hand to have it back again. Oh, the war at Vietnam was still going on, and the hippies were still running around with no clothes on, and the... I keep saying that word, and I really don't want to read it, but I have to because it's part of the story. So, and again, I'm going to show it to you guys, so you know it's there. See? It's right there. So nobody can say I'm saying it because I want to, because I honestly don't ever want to use that word. But if it's part of a story, I will show it to you guys to know that I'm not saying it of my own free will, but I'm saying it because it's written in the book, as I've shown you. But with that said, I'm still running around with no clothes on, and the niggers were yelling a lot, but none of that touched us. We were on a quiet street with the nice neighbors. We were happy, he summed up simply. I asked Rita once if she wasn't worried. You know, bad luck comes in threes and all that. She said no for us. She said Andy was special. She said God had drawn a ring around him. Billings looked morbidly at the ceiling. That last year wasn't so good. Something about the house changed. I started keeping my boots in the hall because I didn't like to open the closet door anymore. I kept thinking, well, what if it's in there, all crouched down and ready to spring the second I opened the door? And I'd started thinking I could hear squishy noises, as if something black and green was moving around in there just a little. Rita asked me if I was working too hard, and I started to snap at her, just like the old days. I got sick to my stomach leaving them alone to go to work, but I was glad to get out. God help me, I was glad to get out. I started to see, that it lost us for a while when we moved. It had to hunt around, slinking through the streets at night, and maybe creeping in the sewers, smelling for us. It took a year, but it found us. It's back. It wants Andy, and it wants me. I start to think maybe if you think of a thing long enough and believe in it, it gets real. Maybe all the monsters we were scared of when we were kids Frankenstein and Wolfman and Mummy, maybe they were real. Real enough to kill the kids that were supposed to have fallen into grave gravel pits or drowned in lakes or were just never found. Maybe. Are you backing away from something, Mr. Billings? Billings was silent for a long time. 2 minutes clicked off the digital clock. Then he said abruptly, Andy died in February. Rita wasn't there. She got a call from her father. Her mother had been in a car crash the day after New Year's and wasn't expected to live. She took a bus back that night. Her mother didn't die, but she was on the critical list for a long time. 2 months. I had a very good woman who stayed with Andy days. We kept house nights, and closet doors kept coming open. Billings licked his lips. The kid was sleeping in the room with me. It's funny, too. Rita asked me once when he was 2 if I wanted to move him into another room. Spock or one of those other quacks claims it's bad for kids to sleep with their parents, see? Supposed to give them traumas about sex and all that. But we never did it unless the kid was asleep. And I didn't want to move him. I was afraid to, after Denny and Cheryl. But you did move him, didn't you? Dr. Harper asked. Yeah, Billings said. He smiled a stiff yellow smile. I did. Silence again. Billings wrestled with it. I had to, he barked finally. I had to! It was all right when Rita was there, but when she was gone, it started to get bolder. It started. He rolled his eyes at Harper and bared his teeth in a savage grin. Oh, you wouldn't believe it. I know what you think. It's just another goofy for your case book. I know that, but you weren't there, you lousy smug head peeper. One night every door in the house blew wide open. One morning I got up and found a trail of mud and filth across the hall between the coat closet and the front door. Was it going out? Coming in? I don't know! Before Jesus, I just don't know! Records all scratched up and covered with slime, mirrors broken, and the sounds. The sounds. He ran a hand through his hair. You'd wake up at 3 in the morning and look into the dark, and at the first you'd say, it's only the clock, but underneath it you could hear something moving in a stealthy way, but not too stealthy, because it wanted you to hear it. A slimy, sliding sound like something from the kitchen drain, or a clicking sound like claws being dragged lightly over the staircase banister. And you'd close your eyes, knowing that hearing it was bad, but if you saw it, and always you should be afraid that the noises might stop for a little while, and then there would be a laugh right over your face and a breath of air like stale cabbage on your face, and then hands on your throat. Billings was pallid and trembling, so I moved him. I knew it would go for him, see, because he was weaker, and it did. That very first night he screamed in the middle of the night, and finally, when I got up the cojones to go in, he was standing up in bed and screaming, The boogeyman, Daddy! Boogeyman! Wanna go with Daddy! Go with Daddy! Billings' voice had become a high treble like a child's. His eyes seemed to fill his entire face. He almost seemed to shrink on the couch. But I But I couldn't. The childish breaking treble continued. I couldn't. And an hour later there was a scream. And an hour later there was a scream. An awful gurgling scream. And I knew how much I loved him because I ran in. I didn't even turn on the light. I ran. Oh, Jesus, God, Mary. It had him. It was shaping him. Shaped him just like a terrier shapes a piece of cloth, and I could see something with awful slumped shoulders and a scarecrow head, and I could smell something like a dead mouse in a pop bottle, and I heard. He trailed off, and then his voice clicked back into an adult range. I heard it when Andy's neck broke. Billings' voice was cool and dead. It made a sound like ice cracking when you're standing on a country pond in winter. Then what happened? Oh, I ran. Billings said in the same cool, dead voice. I went to an all-night diner. How's that for complete cowardice? Ran to the all-night diner and drank 6 cups of coffee. Then I went home. It was already dawn. I called the police even before I went upstairs. He was lying on the floor and staring at me, accusing me. A tiny bit of blood ran down from out of one ear. Only a drop, really. And the closet door was open, but just a crack. The voice stopped. Harper looked at the digital clock. 50 minutes had passed. Make an appointment with the nurse, he said. In fact, several of them. Tuesdays and Thursdays? I only came to tell my story, Billings said. To get it off my chest. I lied to the police, see? Told them the kid must have tried to get out of his crib in the night and they swallowed it. Of course they did. That's just what it looked like. Accidental. Like the others. But Rita knew. Rita, finally, knew. He covered his eyes with his right arm and began to weep. Mr. Billings, there is a great deal to talk about, Dr. Harper said after a pause. I believe we should remove some of the junk you've been carrying, but first you have to want to get rid of it. Don't you believe I do? Billings cried, removing his arm from his eyes. They were red, raw, wounded. Not yet, Harper said quietly. Tuesdays and Thursdays? After a long silence, Billings muttered, God damn shrink. All right. Make an appointment with the nurse, Mr. Billings, and have a good day. Billings laughed emptily and walked out of the office quickly without looking back. The nurse's station was empty. A small sign on the desk blotter said, back in a minute. Billings turned and went back into the office. Doctor, your nurse is... The room was empty, but the closet door was open. Just a crack. So nice, the voice from the closet said. So, oh, so, God damn it. Hold on, let me get a drink. Maybe that might help me. Let's try this again. So, so nice, the voice from the closet said. So nice. Wait, so nice. The words sounded as if they might have come through a mouthful of rotted seaweed. Billings stood rooted to the spot in the closet as the closet door swung open. He dimly felt warmth at his crotch as he wet himself. So nice, the boogeyman said as it shambled out. It still held its Dr. Harper mask in one rotted, spade claw hand. Alright. gray matter. They had been predicting a norther all week, and along about Thursday we got it. A real screamer that piled up 8 inches by 4 in the afternoon, and showed no signs of slowing down. The usual 5 or 6 were gathered around the Reliable and Henry's Night Owl, which is the only little store on this side of Bangor that stays open right around the clock. Henry doesn't do a huge business. Mostly it amounts to selling the college kids their beer and wine, but he gets by, and it's a place for us old duffers on Social Security to get together and talk about who's died lately and how the world's going to hell. The afternoon Henry was at the counter, Bill Bill Pelham, Bertie Connors, Carl Littlefield, and me was tipped up by the stove. Outside, not a car was moving on Ohio Street, and the plows was having hard going. The wind was the softened drifts across that looked like the backbone on a dinosaur. Henry'd only had 3 customers all afternoon. That is, if you want to count in Blind Eddie. Eddie's about 70, and he ain't completely blind. Runs into things, mostly. Oh! Hashtag Luigi Sane Raid. Welcome, Raiders. Luigi Sane and Super Wario Gaming. How are you guys doing tonight? And Luigi Sane, and Luigi Sane, what were you streaming and how did your stream go? Somebody has it going. I've been really enjoying Mario Maker 2. Well, to answer your first question, to answer your first bit, I have to say I'm doing pretty good right now. Not too bad. And glad to hear you're enjoying Mario Maker 2. I've honestly been thinking about getting it myself, but I feel like at this rate it probably would be better to probably wait until a third one came out, if they do make a third one. But at the same time, I'm like, maybe I might, but maybe. I'm still thinking about that. He comes in once or twice a week and sticks a loaf of bread under his coat and walks out with an expression on his face like, "There, you stupid son, sons of a bitches! Fooled you again!" What? Yeah, man, I'm happy you've been consistent with streaming your favorite book and film reviews. Yeah, like, yeah, I'm gonna try to get back into gaming soon because I know at some point doing reading and watch along live streams are gonna feel tedious. So I'm hoping at some point I'll get back to the streaming a game, going back to video game streams. So that way we're back to having a mixed bag again. Well, some people not everybody likes to join in on the. Not everybody likes to joins in on raids, yeah, but it's all right. It's as I always like to say. Every time I've had it to where I've had viewers and I try to do a raid for somebody, and then it ultimately turns out I'm the only one doing it. I always say the same thing. It's the thought that counts, right? I always ask that question, but I do believe it doesn't matter how many people stop by. It's the matter of that. At least it's the thought that counts. Yes, I do. I do indeed believe that. Bertie once asked Henry why he never put a stop to it. I'll tell you, Henry said. A few years back. Oh, hey, no problem. Hey, no problem, Warrior Gaming. You didn't have to. You didn't have to fix your comment. I knew what you meant. You're good. You're fine. Don't worry about it. A few years back, the Air Force wanted $20 million to rig up a flying model of an airplane they had planned out. Well, it cost them $75 million, and then the damn thing wouldn't fly. That happened 10 years ago when Blind Eddie and myself were considerably younger, And I voted for the woman who sponsored that bill. Blind Eddie voted against her. And since then, I've been buying his bread. Betty didn't look like he quite followed all of that. Well, Bertie, not Betty, Bertie, but didn't look like he quite followed all of that. But he sat back to muse over it. Now the door opened again, letting in a blast of the cold gray air outside, and a young kid came in, stamping snow off his boots. I placed him after a second. He was Richie Grenadine's kid. It looked like he just kissed the wrong end of the baby. His Adam's apple was going up and down, and his face was the color of old oilcloth. Mr. Parmalee, he says to Henry, his eyeballs rolling around in his head, like ball bearings. You gotta come. You gotta take him his beer and come. I can't stand to go back there. I'm scared. Hey, warrior, I appreciate the kind statement there. While you're reading, it reminds me of how much I had to focus reading the night school summaries and answering questions as part of a homework with children. You know what? Here's the funny thing. When I was growing up, depending on the book, I either was interested in it, like the Harry Potter books. I was very interested in the Harry Potter books, and even after the controversy surrounding J.K. Rowling, even with that, nothing was going to stop me from reading those books. A, because I've had them for many years, and B, again, I enjoy those books. Nothing is, I can say, like I said before, I can always say, I love Harry Potter, don't really care much for J.K. Rowling, but I still like Harry Potter in the end because that was my childhood growing up. Uh, but my school program had this program called my elementary school had this program called accelerated reading. I don't know if kids do that though, but yeah, but yeah, there was that, and I very much did not. I didn't entirely like it. Yeah, there were some books that I grew up with. Like I grew up with the Magic Tree House books, which I'm gonna start getting all the books to the best of my ability. Primarily for my niece and nephew because they're still young enough to read it. I think, especially my niece. She's still young enough that she could read it. But either way, even if they wanted to read it in their teens, I'd still let them read them if they wanted to. But anyway, I grew up with the Magic Tree House books. I grew up with the Berenstain Bears. I grew up with, like I said, the Harry Potter books. What other books did I grow up with? Time Warp Trio. I grew up with the Time Warp Trio books. Um, and then it wasn't until middle and high school that I started slowly but surely getting more and more into books. Um, and and it wasn't until but it was high school where I was so interested in books, and this is not a joke. I was so interested in reading books that I was literally voted most likely to be caught reading because I was reading books so much that it wasn't even funny. But to this day, I would easily say my favorite book that I've read of all of the books that I've read thus far will always be Tears of a Tiger. And I do plan on getting the trilogy based on that, as well as the books. And since I got two of the books, I might as well get the final one. The books like um, what was it? The Battle of Jericho, November Blues, and then the final book after that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I know where I'm at right here. I'm gonna do that. Let's see. Man, you're definitely a very focused and intelligent reader. W4E, I'll be right back. Alright, Luigi. Luigi. Do what you gotta do. Take your time, and I'll see you when you get back. But yes, I do like, but yeah, I'm a very big reader, especially. I mean, Part of the reason why I started, now that's part of the reason why I started doing reading streams, because it shows you that I'm very passionate about reading. As a matter of fact, I have had two friends of mine who are both considering writing a book, writing novels, writing a novel of some sort. And on both of them, I wish them both the best of luck in doing this, been taking part in this venture. Because for me personally, I'm more of a book. I would love to be a book writer, but I'm more of a book reader if I'm being honest. Like I actually remember another thing that my high school did when I was uh, while I was there. They were always my English teacher in particular always was talk. My English teachers were always talking about this thing called NaNoWriMo, which would actually start this month. Today actually. But anyway, so NaNoWriMo was basically something for kids, for students, for schools, I think. I don't know if they let adults take part in it, but either way. So they do that. And I remember one time, there was this one idea of a story that I was very interested in, that I think would probably interest a mystery novel writer, maybe. And the whole story was that it was about a high schooler who was, he was living the perfect life. Like, yeah, it was a normal family kind of thing. They have arguments, they may mess with each other, but at the end of the day, they love each other, right? Perfect life perfect life, right? But then one day, uh, everything changes for this young man, where his parents are dead, and due to the circumstantial evidence, but the police don't see it as circumstantial, they see it as legitimate proof that the culprit did it. The police suspect he did it. Now, he is wanting to try to find out who actually killed his parents before uh, the police arrest him. So he's literally on the run from the cops while also trying to clear his name at the same time. That may sound a bit cliched, but I think it would still make for a good story. Who knows if I gave a mystery writer a bit of an idea for a story there. Maybe, like a bit of a synopsis for them. They would just have to write the story itself if they wanted to. But anyway, getting the story here. Getting back to this story here. Now slow down, Henry says, taking off his white butcher's apron and coming around the counter. What's the matter? Your dad been on a drunk? I realized when he said that Richie hadn't been in for quite some time. Usually he'd be by once a day to pick up a case of whatever beer was going cheapest at that time. A big fat man with jowls like pork butts and hamlock arms. Richie always was a pig about his beer, but he handled it okay when he was working at the sawmill out in Clifton. Then something happened. A pulper piled a bad load, or maybe Richie just made it out that way. And Richie was off work, free and easy, with the sawmill company paying him compensation. Something in his back. Anyway, he got awful fat. He hadn't been in lately, although once in a while I'd seen his boy come in for Richie's nightly piece. Nice enough boy. Henry sold him the beer, for he knew it was only the boy doing as his father said. He's been on a drunk, the boy was saying now. But that ain't the trouble. It's, it's, oh Lord, it's awful! Henry saw he was going to bawl, so he said real quick, Carl, will you watch things for a minute? Sure. Now, Tommy, you come back into the stock room, and tell me what's what. He led the boy away, and Carl went around behind the counter and sat on Henry's stool. No one said anything for quite a while. You could hear 'em both. You could hear 'em back there. Henry's deep, slow voice, and then Timmy's gr- Grenadine's high one, speaking very fast. Then the boy commenced to cry, and Bill Pelham cleared his throat and started filling up his pipe. I ain't seen Richie for a couple months, I said. Bill grunted. No loss. He was in, near the end of October, Carl said. Near Halloween. Bought a case of Smith's beer. He was getting awful net meaty. There wasn't much more to say. The boy was still crying, but he was talking at the same time. Outside the wind kept on whooping and yowling, and the radio said we'd have another 6 inches or so by morning. It was mid-January, and it made me wonder if anyone had seen Richie since October, besides his boy, that is. The talking went on for quite a while, but finally Henry and the boy came back out. The boy had taken his coat off, but Henry had put his on. The boy was kind of hitching in his chest the way you do when the worst is past, but his eyes was red, and when he glanced at you, he looked down at the floor. Henry looked worried. I thought I'd send Timmy here upstairs and have my wife cook him up a toasted cheese or something. Maybe a couple of you fellas would like to go around to Richie's place with me. Timmy says he wants some beer. He gave me the money. He tried to smile, but it was a pretty sick affair, and he soon gave up. Sure, Bertie says. What kind of beer? I'll go fetch her. Get Haru Supreme, Henry said. We got some cut-down boxes back there. I got up too. It would have to be Bertie and me. Okay. Alright, hold on a second. Ah, family member made some brownies. Yum! Oh, and even better, they got the cream cheese toppings on them. And I love the brownies with the cream cheese. I don't. It's all because when uh when I was doing when I was doing this cooking when I was taking part in this cooking class, one of the freaking me, one of the things that we did was one of the things that we did was basically taking the page out of Cupcake. We were basically doing our own version of Cupcake Wars. And I remember we did a cupcake where we made a regular cupcake, but then we took these Oreo balls that we made earlier in the school in the semester, I think, and we put those in the cupcakes, and then we would put the cream cheese icing on the cupcake. Then we would take a half of an Oreo, put it on top of the icing, and put actually we would take half an Oreo with the icing on it, and then we would uh, put a smiley face on the cupcake, or on not on the cupcake, on the white frosting of the Oreo, and then we would put that on top of on the icing of the cupcake. Lo and behold, we just about won every single award in that. Best tasting cupcake and best looking cupcake. We won both awards there. And also, I think we got it for uniqueness, and that was also an award. Because most people just have a cupcake as it is. They usually, they sometimes do, but they sometimes don't add things inside of the cupcake. We added an Oreo ball into that cupcake. And it was really good. So much chocolate involved. And it's like half chocolate, half Oreo with a thing of cream cheese icing. That's basically what it was, and I would love to try to make that again. But it was so good in my book. I really loved it. Anyway, I got up too. It would have to be Bertie and me. Carl's arthritis gets something awful on days like this, and Billy Pelham don't have much use of his right arm anymore. Bertie got 4 6-packs of Haros and I packed them into a box while Henry took the boy upstairs to the apartment overhead. Well, he straightened that out with his missus and came back down, looking over his shoulder once to make sure the upstairs door was closed. Billy spoke up, barely busting. What's up? Has Richie been working the kid over? No, Henry said. I'd just as soon not say anything just yet. It'd sound crazy. I will show you something, though. The money Timmy had to pay for the beer with. He shed $4 bills out of his pocket, holding them by the corner, and I don't blame him. It was all covered with the gray, slimy stuff that looked like the scum on top of bad preserves. He laid them down on the counter with a funny smile and said to Carl, "Don't let anybody touch 'em. Not if that, not if what the kid says is even half right." And he went around to the sink by the meat counter and washed his hands. I got up, put on my pen coat and scarf and buttoned up. It was no good taking a car. Richie lived in an apartment building down on the curved street, which is as close to straight up and down as the law allows, and it's the last place the plows touch. As we were going out, Bill Pelham called after us, "Watch out now!" Henry just nodded and put the case of Haros on the little handcart he keeps by the door, and out we trundled. The wind hit us like a saw blade, and right away I pulled my scarf up over my ears. We paused in the doorway just for a second while Bertie pulled on his gloves. He had a painted sort of wince on his face, and I knew how he felt. It's all well for younger fellows to go and skiing all day and running those goddamn wasp-winged snowmobiles half the night, but when you get up over 70 without an oil change, you feel that northeast wind around your heart. "I don't want to scare you boys," Henry said with that queer, aka weird, because that's the original definition of queer, sort of revolted smile still on his mouth. But I'm gonna I'm going to show you this all the same. And I'm going to tell you what the boy told me while we walk up there, because I want you to know, you see?" And he pulled a 45 caliber hog leg out of his coat pocket. The pistol he'd kept loaded and ready under the counter ever since he went to 24 hours a day, back in 1958. I don't know where he got it, but I do know the one time he flashed it at a stuck-up guy. The fella just turned around and bolted right out the door. Henry was a cool one, all right. I saw him throw out a college kid that came in one time and gave him a hard time about cashing a check. The kid walked away like his ass was on sideways and he had a crap. Well, I only tell you that because Henry wanted Bertie and me to know he meant business, and we did too. So we set out, bent into the wind like washerwomen. Henry treadling the cart and telling us what the boy had said. The wind was trying to rip the words away before we could hear 'em, but we got most of it, more than we wanted to. I was damn glad Henry had his Frenchman's pecker stowed away in his coat pocket. The kid said it must have been the beer. You know how you can get a bad can every now and again, flat or smelly or green as the pea stains in an Irishman's underwear. A fellow once told me that all it takes is a tiny hole to let in bacteria that'll do some damn strange things. The hole can be so small that the beer won't hardly dribble out, but the bacteria can get in. And beer's good food for some of those bugs. Anyway, the kid said Richie brought back a case of Golden Light, just like always that night in October, and sat down to polish it off while Timmy did his homework. Timmy was just about ready for bed when he hears Richie say, "Christ, Jesus, that ain't right." And Timmy says, "What's that, Pop?" "That beer," Richie says. "God, that's the worst taste I ever had in my mouth." Most people would wonder why in the name of God he drank it if it tasted so bad. But then most people have never seen Richard Grenadine go to his beer. I was down in Wally's spa one afternoon, and I saw him win the goddamnedest bet. He bet a fella he could drink 22 bit glasses of beer in 1 minute. Nobody local would take him up, but this salesman from Montpelier laid down a $20 bill, and Richie covered him. He drank all 20 with 7 seconds to spare, although when he walked out he was more than 3 sails into the wind. So I expect Richie had most of that bad can in his gut before his brain could warn him. I'm gonna puke, Richie says. Look out! But by the time he got to the head, it had passed off, and that was the end of it. The boy said he smelt the can, and it smelt like something crawled in there and died. There was a little gray dribble around the top, too. 2 days later, the boy comes home from school, and there's Richie sitting in front of the TV and watching the afternoon tearjerkers with every goddamn shade in that place pulled down. What's up? Timmy asks. Richie don't hardly ever roll in before 9. I'm watching the TV, Richie says. I didn't seem to want to go out today. Timmy turned on the light and over the sink, and Richie yelled at him, and turn off that friggin' light! So Timmy did, not asking how he's going to do his homework in the dark. When Richie's in that mood, you don't ask him nothing. And go on, give me a case, Richie says. Money's on the table. When the kid gets back, his dad's still sitting in the dark. Only now it's dark outside too, and the TV's off. The kid starts getting the creeps. Well, who wouldn't? Nothing but a dark flat and your daddy sitting in the corner like a big lump. Excuse me. Alright, welcome back. I was reading of the suspense happening with this poetry. Okay, so first off, doing pretty well. Had a bit of a few interesting moments in the first story that I've read. Um, let's see, any suspense happening? Well, they're trying to see what if the boy is telling the truth, but they seem to be on the way to his house to determine what's going on over there. And is this poetry? No, it isn't. It is a short story though, but it's not poetry. Let's see. Ooh, I like the phrase. I like the using the phrase "money on the table." And money's on the table. Get your shit and get. No, I'm kidding. I had to do that. Anyway, always go. Hello, Steven. How you doing tonight? Always go. Are you talking about the story I'm reading, or are we talking the book in general, or Stephen King in general? So he puts the beer on the table, knowing that Richie don't like it so cold it spikes his forehead, and when he gets close to his old man, he starts to notice a kind of rotten smell, like an old cheese someone left standing on the counter over the weekend. He doesn't say shit or go blind, though, as the old man was never what you'd call a cleanly soul. Instead, he goes into his room and shuts the door and does his homework, and after a while, he hears the TV start to go, and Richie's popping the top in his first of the evening. And for 2 weeks or so, that's the way things were. The kid got up in the morning and went to school, and when he got home, Richie'd be in front of the television and beer money on the table. The flat was smelling ranker and ranker, too. Richie wouldn't have the shades up at all, and about the middle of November he made Timmy stop studying in his room. Said he couldn't abide the light under the door. So Timmy started going down the block to a friend's house after getting his dad the beer. Then one day when Timmy came home from school, it was 4 o'clock and pretty near dark already, Richie says, turn on the light. The kid turns on the light over the sink, and damn if Richie ain't all wrapped up in a blanket. Look, Richie says, and one hand creeps out from under the blanket. He is, I believe, he's supposed to be the little kid. if I'm not mistaken. Look, Richie says, and one hand creeps out from under the blanket. Only it ain't a hand at all. Something gray is all the kid could tell Henry. Didn't look like a hand at all. Just a gray lump. Well, Timmy's grenadine was scared bad. He says, Pop, what's happening to you? And Richie says, I don't know, but it don't hurt. It feels kinda nice. So Timmy says, I'm gonna call Dr. Westphale. And the blanket starts to tremble all over. Like something awful was shaking all over under there. And Richie says, don't you dare. If you do, I'll touch you, and you'll end up just like this. And he slides the blanket down over his face for just a minute. Okay, first and foremost, my boy, phrasing! Number two, that ain't creepy. Even with how that phrase sounded, and no matter how a person sees that being told, that's still kind of creepy. Anyway, by then we were up to the corner of Harlow and Curve Street, and I was even colder than the temperature had been on Henry's Orange Crush thermometer when we came out. A person doesn't hardly want to believe such things, and yet there's still strange things in the world. I once knew a fellow named George Kelso, who worked for the Bangor Public Works Department. He spent 15 years fixing water mains and mending electricity cables and all that, and then one day he just up and quit, not 2 years before his retirement. Frankie Hardiman, who knew him, said George went down into a sewer pipe on Essex, laughing and joking just like always, and came up 15 minutes later with his hair just as white as snow and his eyes stare, staring just like he looked through a window into hell. He walked straight down to the VPW garage and punched his clock and went down to Wally's spa and started drinking. It killed him 2 years later. Frankie said he tried to talk to him about it, and George said something one time, and that was when he was pretty well blotto. Turned around on his stool, George did, and asked Frankie Hardiman if he'd ever seen a spider as big as a good-sized dog setting it in a web full of kitties and such all wrapped up in silk thread. Well, what could he say to that? I'm not saying there's any truth in it, but I'm saying that there's things in the corner of the world that would drive a man insane to look him right in the face. So we just stood on the corner a minute in spite of the window, and that was whipping up to the street. What do you see? Bertie asked. He said he could still see his dad, Henry answered, but he said it was like he was buried in gray jelly, and it was all kind of mashed together. He said his clothes were all sticking in and out of his skin, like they was melted to his body. Holy Jesus, Bertie said. Then he covered right up again and started screaming like at the kid to turn off the light. Like he was a fungus, I said. Yes, Henry said. Sort of like that. You keep that pistol handy, Bertie said. Yes, I think I will. And with that, we started to treadle up Curve Street. The apartment house where Richie and Grenadine had his flat was almost at the top of the hill. One of those big Victorian monsters that were built by the pulp and paper barons at the turn of the century. They've just about all been turned into apartment houses now. When Bertie got his breath, he told us Richie lived on the third floor, under that top gable that jutted out like like an eyebrow. I took the chance to ask Henry what happened to the kid after that. Along about the third week in November, the kid came back one afternoon to find Richie had gone, one further than just pulling the shades down. He'd taken and nailed blankets across every window in the place. It was starting to stink worse, too. Kind of a mushy stink, the way fruit gets when it comes to ferment with yeast. When it when it goes to ferment with yeast. A week or so after that, Richard got the kid to start beating, started, got the kid to start heating his beer on the stove. When you feature that, the kid all by himself in that apartment with his dad turning into, well, into something, and eating his beer and then having to listen to him. It, drinking it with awful thick slurping sounds, the way an old man eats his chowder. Can you imagine it? And that's the way things went on until today, when the kid's school let out early because of the storm. The boy says he went right home, Henry told us. There's no light in the upstairs hall at all. The boy claims his dad must have snuck out some night and broke it, so he had to sort of creep down to his door. Well, he heard something moving around in there, and it suddenly pops into his mind that he doesn't know what Richie does all day through the week. He ain't seen his dad stir out of that chair for almost a month, and the man's gotta sleep and go to the bathroom sometimes. There's a Judas hole in the middle of the door, and it's supposed to have a latch on the inside to fasten it shut. Are you talking about a family? No, I'm talking about a young boy. A man is retelling the story that this little boy named Timmy told him as they are walking to his house because, trust but verify. Or in this case, I don't believe him, so I want to see this for myself. That's what I'm going to do. And that's what they're doing. He's telling them what the boy told him as they are walking to his house to see what's going on. Yeah, I do like flashback stories myself. Depends on how good, as long as it's a good story. Good. And when I say good, I don't mean like positive, happy story. Good. I mean like it makes a lot of sense. Good. There's a Judas hole in the middle of the door, and it's supposed to have a latch on the inside to fasten it shut. But it's been busted ever since they lived there. So the kid slides up to the door real easy and pushed it open a bit with his thumb and pokes his eye up to it. By now we were at the foot of the steps and the house was looming over us like a high, ugly face with those windows on the third floor for eyes. I looked up there, and sure enough, those two windows were just as black as pitch, and somebody had put blankets over them or painted them up. It took him a minute to get his eyes adjusted to the gloom, and then he seen a great big gray lump, not like a man at all, slithering over the floor, leaving a gray slimy trail behind it. And then it sort of snaked out an arm or something like an arm, and pried a board off in the wall. It took out a cat. Henry stopped for a second. Bertie was beating his hands together, and it was god awful cold out there on the street, but none of us was ready to go up just yet. A dead cat, Henry recommenced, and that had putrefied, put, putrefacted. The boy said it looked all swole up stiff, and there was little white things crawling all over it. Stop, Bertie said. For Christ's sake. And then his dad ate it. I tried to swallow and something tasted greasy in my throat. That's when Timmy closed the peephole, Henry finished softly, and ran. I don't think I can go up there, Bertie said. Henry didn't say nothing, just looked from Bertie to me and back again. I guess we better, I said. We got Richie's beer. Bertie didn't say anything to that, so we went up to the steps. We went up the steps and in through the front hall door. I smelled it right off. Do you know how a cider smells in summer? You never get the smell of apples out, but in the fall it's all right because it smells tangy and sharp enough to ream your nose right out. But in the summer, it just smells mean. This smell was like that, but a little bit worse. There was one light on in this lower hall, a mean yellow thing in a frosted glass that threw a gloss as thin as buttermilk, and those stairs that went into the shadows. Henry bumped the cart to a stop, and while he was lifting out the case of beer, I thumbed the button at the foot of the stairs and controlled the second floor landing bulb. But it was busted, just as the boys said. Bertie quavered. I'll lug the beer. You just take care of that pistol. Henry didn't argue. He handed it over and we started up. Henry first, then me, then Bertie with the case in his arms. By the time we had fetched the second floor landing, the stink was just that much worse. Rotted apples, all fermented, and under that an even uglier stink. When I lived down in Levant, I had a dog one time. Rex his name was. And he was a good mutt, but not very wise about cars. He got a lick one afternoon while I was at work, and he crawled under the house and died there. My Christ, what a stink. I finally had to go under and haul him out with a pole. That other stench was like that. Fly-blown and putrid, and just as dirty as a boring cob. Until then, wait, hold on a second. Who's Henry? I believe he is the owner of the bar that they were at before they left to come to this house. Up till then, I had kept thinking that maybe it was some sort of joke, but I saw it wasn't. Lord, why don't the neighbors kick up Harry? I asked. See any famous people mentioned in the story? Not really. There was a reference toward Junior Mints somewhere in the story, I think. If not the last one. But yeah, there was a mention of Junior Mints, but that's probably about it. What neighbors? Henry asked, and he was smiling. That clear smile again. Again, I just want to point out, queer in this situation means weird, as it was originally meant to be. Before people started saying queer was a word used in regard toward gay people, just so we're all on the same page of what that word actually meant. And what's the time period of the setting? What's the time period of the setting? It doesn't specify. Uh, it doesn't really specify any. Um, so I'm gonna assume at the time that the short story was published. Yes. Uh, yep. I made sure people understand what I mean what is meant with that word. So yeah. What neighbors? Wait, I already said that. We're moving on. I looked around and saw that the hall had a sort of dusty, unused look, and the door of all three second floor apartments was closed and locked up. Who's the landlord, I wonder? Bertie asked, resting the case on the newel post and getting his breath. Kaito? Surprised you don't kick him out. Who'd go up there and a victim? Henry asked. You? Wait, who'd go up there and a victim? Henry asked. You? Bertie didn't say anything. Presently, well, of course he wouldn't say anything because he knew he got him there. Anyway, presently we started up the next flight, which was even narrower and steeper than the last. It was getting hotter, too. It sounded like every radiator in the place was cranking and hissing. The smell was awful, and I started to feel like someone was stirring my guts with a stick. At the top was a short hole, and one door with a little Judas hole in the middle of it. Bertie made a soft little cry and whispered out, "Look what we're walking in!" I looked down and saw all this slimy stuff on the hall floor, in little puddles. It looked like there'd been a carpet once, but the gray stuff had eaten it all away. Henry walked down to the door, and we went after him. I don't know about Bertie, but I was shaking up in my shoes. Henry never hesitated, though. He raised up that gun and beat on the door with the butt of it. "Richie?" he called, and his voice didn't sound a bit scared, although his face was deadly pale. "Which end of the which character do you like the most? Which one do you dislike?" Well, I'm actually liking them all in their own respective way. Nobody's being so much of an asshole in a way where I just absolutely hate them. They're just doing something here. Um, As for the setting, I just like all of it, so I'm liking the story so far as a whole, that I can't really pick favorites. But if we're gonna be honest, I think people would probably pick Richie because if what the little boy said was true, you killed a fucking cat, dude. You don't kill a cat when they did literally nothing wrong to you. Come on, man. Anyway, Richie, this is Henry Parmalee from down at the Night Owl. I brought your boss. I brought you beer. There wasn't a sound. Wait, there wasn't any answer for perhaps a full minute, and then a voice said, "Where's Timmy? Where's my boy?" I almost ran right then. The voice wasn't human at all. It was queer, weird, and low and bubbly, like someone talking through a mouthful of soot. "He's at my store," Henry said, "having a decent meal. He's just as skinny as a flat cat, Richie." There wasn't nothing for a while, and then some horrible squishing noises, like a man in rubber boots walking through mud. Then the decayed voice spoke right through the other side of the door. "Open the door and shove that beer through," it said. "Only you gotta pull all the ring tabs first. I can't." "In a minute," Henry said. "What kind of shape are you in, Richie?" "Never mind that," the voice said, and it was horribly eager. "Just push in the beer and go!" "It ain't just dead cats anymore, is it?" Henry said, and he sounded sad. He wasn't holding the gun's butt up anymore. Now it was business end first. By the way, I'm in a calculus one and I'm studying optimization. No, I haven't. And some of those things would not make much sense to me. I like society that works together instead of oppressing. Some of the stories about that should contain. Well, there are stories where they talk about characters that do play about characters who are oppressed in some way, but ultimately they find a way to get out of that oppression, also in some way, shape, or form. Whether and how often that happens depends on the story. Yeah. Right now they didn't make sense to me, but because the university I attended is a good read. Okay, that's nice. And suddenly, in a flash of light, I made the mental connection Henry had already made, perhaps even as Timmy was telling the story. The smell of decay and rot seemed to double in my nostrils when I remembered. Two young girls in some old Salvation Army had wino had disappeared in the town during the last 3 weeks or so, all after dark. "Send it in or I'll come out and get it," the voice said. Henry gestured us back and we went. "I guess you better, Richie." He coughed his piece. There was nothing then. Not for a long time. Let's see. James, by the way, I'd imagine the story taking place in the. Well, it does take place during the wintertime, that is for certain. But I don't know if it's during the holiday season or if it's post Christmas time. I think it may be almost Christmas, if not after that. To tell the truth, I began to feel as if it was all over. Then that door burst open, so sudden and so hard that it actually bulged before slamming out against the wall. And out came Richie. It was just a second, before Bernie and me went down those stairs like a school kid, 4 and 5 at a time, and out the door into the snow, slipping and sliding. It's any other holiday pass anyway, so I mean, too hot where I live for being cold over hot. Yeah, my mom's the same way, and I remember asking her, because she would always complain about either or. I was like, alright, mama, so tell me, Which is your favorite season? The hot weather or cold weather? Said the cold weather. Why? Because then I get to snuggle in my blanket. And I'm like, well then you might not be complaining about the cold because you can do that, okay? Jokingly saying that, of course. Going down, we heard Henry fire 3 times. The reports loud as the reports loud as grenades in the closed hallways of that empty, cursed house. What we saw in that 1 or 2 seconds will last me a lifetime, or whatever's left of it. It was like a huge gray wave of jelly, jelly that looked like a man and leaving a trail of slime behind it. But that wasn't the worst. Its eyes were flat and yellow and wild, with no human soul in them. Only there wasn't two, there were four, and right down the center of the thing, betwixt the 2 pairs of eyes, was a white, fibrous line with a kind of pulsing pink flesh showing through like a slit in a hog's belly. It was dividing, you see, dividing into two. Bernie and I didn't say nothing to each other going back to the store. I don't know what was going through his mind, but I know well enough what was in mine. The multiplication table. 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times 2 is 16. 16 times 2 is... We got back. Carl and Bill Pelham jumped up and started asking questions right off. We wouldn't answer, neither of us. We just turned around and waited to see if Henry was going to walk in out of the snow. I was up to 32,768 times 2 in the end of the human race, and so we sat there cozied up to all that fear and waited to see which one was going to finally come back. And here we still sit. I hope it's Henry. I surely do. And that is the end of that story. Hey, no problem, Luigi saying. Have a good rest of your night, and I'll see you later. I am actually going to go ahead, take a little break. I'm going to give you some of those brownies that my family member made. I'll be right back. I'm not going to eat them live. I'm not going to eat them on stream because I am considerate in that regard. But I do want to get me some before she starts questioning me. Now, why haven't you gotten some yet? I'll be right back. Don't worry. go. Alright. Let's see. So I see it is almost 1 past 4 o'clock. Let me check something. Alright, so I just had to check something real quick, and I noticed that, I am, as much as I wanted to read the third story in this, stream, I am actually gonna have to end it there. So, the next time I read Night Shift, hopefully a lot earlier than I did before, I'll be reading, if anything, Battlegrounds, then Trucks, and then if I have the time to do, well, actually I'll probably just read those two stories, because Trucks looks to be a bit of a short story in itself. So for next time I'll read Battleground and then Trucks. And that's what's gonna happen. But for now, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you guys so much for watching this, reading stream. Tomorrow night, I will be going live with doing the reading of doing another part of Psycho. And if I get off early enough, I may also, if I also come home early enough, before that, if I have enough time to do anything besides that, I will be going live with a video game. You'll just have to wait and see what kind of video game it is. But for now, ladies and gentlemen, like I said, thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode, this reading stream. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, this is Forrest Walpole, signing off.